Hi, I'm Tim from the Dagster team, and today you'll learn how to make the most out of Dagster by understanding what each aspect of Dagster's Run UI means and how to use them to debug your data pipelines. I'll start by asking you, well, how do you troubleshoot a failing data pipeline? If you're like me, then you've likely spent a lot of time grepping and grokking through your logs, whether that might be in CloudWatch, Grafana, or in the worst possible cases, raw text files. However, obviously there are limitations to this approach. You might struggle with understanding the context of a log, what asset it impacts, or even just where the log came from. And so sometimes you might want a logging system that's a bit more fit for purpose for the data pipelines that you're trying to build. And Dagster's Run UI and logging system is what I believe is a really great addition to this ecosystem to help solve these problems. Now, I'm coming in here a little biased because this is what I believe are some of the most underrated features in Dagster. Every time your data pipeline is executed through Dagster, a run happens and Dagster stores plenty of metadata, metrics, and logs about it, empowering you to understand what happened when your assets were built or failed to get built. Each run gets its own UI here, and the first thing that catches everyone's eyes are these charts. Let's talk through them really quickly. These charts are a representation of the steps or ops executed in your Dagster run. Most of these ops will map one-to-one with the assets they produce. However, there will be some exceptions, such as if you're using graph or multi-assets. And in the case of graph assets, you'll see each step executed and the name of the asset prefixed before each of those steps. However, if you ever want to see what assets were materialized in a run, you can hover over the assets badge over here and click the View List button to get a list of what assets were materialized, or click View Downstream Lineage to be taken to your asset graph with the assets highlighted. Now, let's head back to this run page so I can highlight this thing over here, which is if you have automatic retries configured on any of your assets, the failed asset step will be rendered as a yellow block, and its subsequent retry will have a separate node rendered after it. The UI has 3 different graphs that you can toggle around. If you want a high-level view that is easy to click and use to navigate, then this default flat view is great. And if you want to understand the complex dependencies across your various steps that are executed, the waterfall view might also be very helpful. However, the time view is often a popular tool to understand how long each step takes, especially in relation to all the other steps. In this view, we can see the idle time in between steps, in addition to these blue translucent blocks that indicate how long it takes for a step's process to start up. Now that we've become acquainted with the top half of the screen, let's go ahead and look at the logs at the bottom over here. This bottom half are the logs that I was hyping up earlier. As you scroll through this pane, you will find all the logs associated with your run. Dagster will give you plenty of logs to help you understand how Dagster is operating. And of course, the UI lets you filter by the severity of the log, but there's more in addition to that. Dagster's logging is an event-based system, and therefore every log is a structured type of event, and you know exactly which step or asset that event came from. Now that you know that each log is structured and categorized, you can also filter and search based on these categories. Let's click on the filter search bar here, and you'll be presented with some autocomplete cues by the UI. I want to filter down a bit so we can find exactly the log of when asset 1 was materialized. Here I'll select the event type as asset materialization and the step for asset 1. And here you'll see that this is the exact point in time asset 1 was materialized, and the metadata associated with that materialization, and a link to that asset in its asset catalog. sometimes you may be working with an external resource or legacy code that isn't using Dagster's logger. I'd highly recommend looking at Dagster pipes, but until then, you can find the raw logs generated by things like print statements from your steps standard out and standard error in this pane too, if you just click on either of these buttons. There is so much more you can do on this page that I don't have enough time to cover, such as retrying your run with some change configurations if a failure happens. And of course, if you're interested in learning things like how to configure your logger, how Dagster provisions workers for each step, and more, please check out the dagster.io website and our documentation. Take care and have a great day.